Does China want Trump or Kamala?
Beijing.
China.
Beijing.
China.
Beijing.
China.
Beijing.
China.
Beijing.
China.
Oh no, here we go. Put on your hater hat because you're about to get mad. Just kidding. As a China watcher who lived in China for 10 years, this is probably the biggest and most frequent question that I get, especially coming off the debates and heading into the election. And I figured now would be a good time to answer it. I really was able to come to a pretty clear conclusion when I did my video about this anti-USA hate campaign that I uncovered that China was putting out and unleashing on their public.
美国自己就不是民主国家，好不好？美国是个垃圾下三滥、不要脸的畜生国家。
But it is difficult to take your own biases and predispositions out of the picture when you're trying to draw a conclusion like this. But I genuinely think I am smack dab in the middle of the political spectrum. So just to show you that I don't have any very clear biases, if I'm going to tell you my opinion, I'm going to base my opinion not on who I prefer, which candidate I prefer, who I think is better on certain issues, or even who's better on China. Rather, I'm going to show you and tell you what China seems to prefer. In fact, just to clear up the whole bias issue, let me go take a political compass test real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, here you go. I don't think it really gets more moderate than that. In fact, in this day and age of political division and what people think they are, extreme left or extreme right or anarchist or communist or libertarian or whatever, you know, people who think that their political identity is their entire being, I feel like I'm a radical for being moderate. Let's coin the term. I am a radical moderate. This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. If I had to recommend one internet security product, it would be Surfshark, the best VPN available. What can I tell you about Surfshark? Well, it's fast and easy to use as you connect to the server that offers the best speed by default, and it's jam-packed with features that go way beyond the basics. After you're connected to it, it secures your data with industry-leading measures by using uncrackable encryption and the most secure VPN protocols. What's more is you can unlock 15 Netflix libraries, including the US and Japan, by merely connecting to a server in the right country. And a very cool feature is you can overcome location-based price discrimination on plane tickets and car rentals and more by connecting to VPN servers in different countries. Yes, they'll give you different prices depending on where you're connected. Surfshark is easy to install and run on unlimited devices on a single subscription. Secure your privacy with Surfshark. Enter coupon code LAOI86 for 4 extra months at surfshark.com/LAOI86 or go to the link in the description below. Thanks. Now, when looking at the two candidates, both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, you'd think that both literally already work for China, if you were paying attention to what the opposition is saying. I mean, there's accusations floating around left and right. It's absolutely crazy. This party's in bed with China. This party's in bed with China. Some Democrats say that Trump would benefit China, and some Republicans are convinced that Democrats are joined with China at the hip. I think neither is true. Both Democrats and Republicans in general have pretty staunchly anti-Chinese government stances. I can tell you what China really cares about. Therefore, that would help you understand which candidate they would prefer in this scenario. First of all, China wants a trade advantage with the US on economics. So economics in general is what they care about. China wants military expansion and international influence, and China wants to be able to do whatever it wants in regards to human rights with the oppression of its own people and also in countries that it wants to exert influence on. And they don't want to be called out for it. Those are the three things they really care about. Well, Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, recently called China the biggest threat to the U.S. Some strong words. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris has similarly promised to make sure America, not China, wins competition for the 21st century. Some Republicans want to decouple from China, while the Democrats use the word de-risking. I mean, we can play semantics, but as Alex Lowe said from the South China Morning Post, the new term, de-risking, much like Harris's broader approach to China, just sounds less belligerent. The underlying hostility remains. Trump's tariffs and economic restrictions put on China were largely continued by Biden and, in fact, expounded upon when it came to tech and EV regulation, and it looks like Harris would do the same. Military support for Taiwan is something that's a bit up in the air, I guess. It seems like Trump is less apt to outright say that he'd defend Taiwan militarily as opposed to the more clear stance from the Democrats, but But this could just ultimately be strategic. I doubt anybody in the White House is going to reduce our influence as America in the South China Sea and just completely ignore what China is doing. Both Trump and Harris have condemned human rights violations committed by the Chinese government, like the oppression of the Uyghur ethnic minority in Xinjiang and pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong. And the more I look at it, the more I realize that China is kind of screwed either way in this scenario. Americans may be very divided, but they're not divided on China. In fact, 81% of Americans hold unfavorable views of China. Gee, I wonder why. Could it be that they've been acting like a massive bully for a very long time now? Anyway, you don't believe me? Look at the House Select Committee on the CCP. It's a bipartisan organization that combats the Chinese government's negative influence and identifies and addresses the bad things the Chinese government is trying to accomplish in the USA and abroad. These are Democrats and Republicans working together. Believe it or not. Some recent things they've done. Moulanar on Chinese social media influence operations targeting US elections. They are constantly doing good work and they're constantly working together. Again, Republicans and Democrats. When scrolling through the Chinese internet during Trump's presidency, I saw an absolute metric ton of anti-Trump content, both from netizens and the Chinese government itself. During Biden's presidency, I see an absolute metric ton of anti-Biden content. And now with the election coming up, I see an absolute metric ton of anti-Kamala, Trump, Vance, Waltz, just a massive uptick in anti-America content in general. When I look at state media from China aimed at Americans in English, it's all campaigns to divide the USA. It is a relentless multi-billion-dollar campaign from the Chinese government to make you not necessarily pick a partisan side, but it's designed to make you hate your own country and distrust its leadership no matter who's in power. Look what China did with the Hawaii Fire disinformation campaign. Yes, they fooled and took advantage of right-wing influencers in this case and got them to spread misinformation, but their goal was to influence really anyone who was going to pick up on that stuff. They wanted people to think that the USA is the bad guy, that they don't care about their own citizens. You need to distrust your government. China also influences left-wing influencers as well. I see their messaging creep into very popular American influencers, especially on YouTube. It happens on both sides, and it's to sow division, similar to what we see Russia doing all the time. Russian disinformation and influence campaigns are what people are currently talking about, but China's influence and goals are largely the same in my opinion. Both countries pose a massive threat to the health of information that Americans consume. In my opinion, China isn't really pro or anti any political party. It's just dead set opposed to the USA and its democratic values that we have here. They do not want there to be a global order where people have a freedom of speech and opinion, nor do they want a global order that focuses on human rights, rule of law, and international order, because the government of a dictatorship like China relies on oppression, bribery, trickery, deceit, power vacuums, and theft to achieve its goals. Now, here's the deal, guys. China aside, the division that I see in my country is something that has bothered me to no end. It's really gotten out of control, but I don't think a lot of the bickering and opposition that people here have with each other is even real. I actually have a theory. And this can be for my fellow Americans, or it can be for anyone in this increasingly polarized world. Although the media, especially social media, artificially corrals and divides us to think that any opposing opinion, candidate, or belief is the devil itself, and everything is crumbling around us, and it's the fault of the opposing party, I really don't think it needs to be like this. The way that social media bias works is that it's created feedback loops to make you feel that you are staunchly one way and feeds you more and more things that confirm your biases. Sometimes biases you don't even have, but you think that you should have because that's what people in your specific group think. I think you, the person watching this video right now, are probably not a right-wing extremist. And you, the other person that's watching this video, are not a left-wing extremist. In fact, I think on this particular chart I just showed you earlier, I think I would hazard a guess that all of you are somewhere in here. In fact, I bet you have a hell of a lot more in common with a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or whatever than you do with some influence campaign from an authoritarian country that wants your country to fail. In fact, I promise you do. Let's go see what Democrats and Republicans disagree on. It seems like a lot. Let's pick one issue. Okay, healthcare. That's one I always hear about. People are always arguing about healthcare. Let's see what Democrats think. They support universal healthcare, a strong support of government involvement in healthcare, and Republicans think private companies can provide healthcare services more efficiently than government-run programs. Divisive as hell, right? Yeah, it's an important issue, too. Many of you watching will disagree with each other on this issue of healthcare. This issue might even make you think less of somebody else. It maybe even make you think that you cannot even get along with this person. But let me ask you a question. Do you think you would get along better with a person that disagrees with you on healthcare? Or do you think you would get along better with a literal government agent of China or Russia who literally want to turn your electricity and water off to cause panic, death, and destruction of your country and society? Do you see what we're dealing with here? It's not even about who's tougher on China or who's this and that at this point. Division of America is China's goal. It's not necessarily a particular candidate or political movement that China or other authoritarian governments that oppose the West really care about. They don't necessarily care about who wins. They only want you to hate your friends and your neighbors and your leaders and believe in the complete breakdown of society so that they can take advantage of a weaker America and strengthen their selfish position in the world. I hope that you guys, as viewers, can be armed with the knowledge that there are these campaigns out there, and they're being uncovered, and we need to be aware of them. They are causing a lot of damage and further division in America, and America does not need that. Identifying influence operations from other countries is going to become more and more important in the future. And I personally don't take too kindly to people in my country being targeted by adversarial nations who want the worst for them. If you enjoyed this video, you're probably going to love The China Show, which is my weekly show I do about China's news, the viral, the funny, the positive, the crazy, the laughs, everything in between, the serious stuff too. I do this with Serpent over on The China Show every single Friday, so make sure you're tuned into that. It's also available on audio, so go to any of your podcast places like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever you choose to listen to podcasts on. Look for The China Show, and please click follow. It would really help us a lot, and I promise you're going to love the content. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.